that you should not be approaching people under 16 for sex anyway, particularly if you're a much older person.
Well, if a young person is being pestered for sex by an older person and they don't want that, then that quite clearly is wrong. And they need to be given the confidence that they have a right to say no to sex. Now, the problem is, if you say that no one under the age of consent has the ability to give their valid consent in law, which is what the legal system currently says, you're effectively saying that young people have no sexual rights.
The law is there to help them say no.
The law can't have it both ways. It can't say that people have a right to say no to sex, and then they don't have any rights in law when it comes to sex. So what I'd like to see is a revision of the whole legal system so that we back up a lower age of consent, not in order to encourage young people to have sex, but to remove from them the threat of criminalization and to back it up with earlier, more explicit sex education in schools so young people have the knowledge, the information, the skills, the confidence to make their own responsible choices.
Peter, thank you. Joining this part of the debate is columnist Anna Blundy, who thinks it's unnecessary for the law to set an age of consent. Anna Blundy, you're 27 now. Did you respect the law when you were younger?
No, not remotely, and I didn't know anybody else who did either. I was desperately trying to lose my virginity. Not that I think there's anything to lose. I think you can only gain, really. But I was desperately trying to lose my virginity from the age of about 12. Finally managed to cajole some poor man into it when I was 15. And I think a lot of other people were behaving in the same way. We used to have a competition at school to see who would lose it first and how many people we could sleep with. And none of us really slept with very many people at all. And it was all fairly innocent. But it's good fun. I think it's preposterous to suggest that there needs to be a law to enforce this.
Were you unaware there was a law?
No, probably not. I think it was a joke. But you can't possibly enforce this kind of thing. We're genetically programmed to start wanting to reproduce in our early teens. And you want to. You can't help it. I mean, it's all that anybody between the age of about 12 and 16 ever think about, male and female.
Melanie, how are you going to police a generation that thinks like this?
Well, you can't police it, but I think that's no argument for saying that there shouldn't be laws. I mean, laws express the collective sort of moral sense of a community. They lay down broad boundaries about where behaviour is considered right or wrong. Laws are broken all the time. We have laws, for example, to police speeding limits. The vast majority of people ignore speeding limits. And
you're not evolutionarily programmed to speed in your car. I mean, the point is, it's inside us, it's hormonal. You want to have sex in your early teens.
Well,
you don't want to
evolutionary programmed to rape and pillage, probably, and to have territorial conquest. But I think in the name of civilization, we should actually try to curb these things, don't you?
Germaine? I think there's a strangeness about this word consent. It implies that someone else has initiated a course of action, and you have to be a certain age in order to consent to it. Because the law is actually interested not in the criminality of the person consenting, but in the criminality of the person initiating the act. Now, it seems to me that what's going on here is a recognition of a disproportion or an asymmetry in sexual relations, which is actually, in a strange way, institutionalizing sex as a dominant relationship. I seek to dominate you, you are old enough to consent, or something like that. Yes. Now, I think this is the grammar that has to be altered, but it isn't going to be changed until our whole attitude towards sexuality as the expression of a personality is completely transformed.
But don't you feel that young people are being pressurized into having sex who don't want to? I had a girl come into my office, about the same age as you say that you were out there desperately trying to lose your virginity, came in, opened the door, said, "Mrs. Elliott, I have a secret. I don't want to lose my virginity. I'm not ready, but I can't tell anybody." So she was going around bragging to everybody, indeed, that she had done sex. The pressure on young people needs to be balanced with our protection of them from things they're not ready to do.
You can't do that with the law, for goodness sake.
Yeah, I mean, in the Netherlands, the age of consent is effectively 12 for both heterosexual and homosexual relations. That's a legal right which exists, but it's backed up with good quality sex education and a culture which says that young people have sexual rights, including the right to say yes to sex and the right to say no. And the end result is that in the Netherlands, young people choose to have their first sexual experience, on average, at a later age than in Britain, where the age of consent is 16. And the number of pregnancies and abortions in young teenage girls in the Netherlands is between 7 and 11 times less than in Britain.
And I'll tell
so
you
that shows that sexual rights for young people, backed up with good quality sex education, leads to wiser, more responsible behavior.
What that shows is good quality sex education allows children to realize the consequences of actions and to take responsibility. It doesn't necessarily follow that because you say, oh, you can do it at 12, that therefore people are not getting pregnant. It just shows. I agree with you only on the sex education. I do not agree with you on lowering the age of consent to either 14 or 12.
But this is a culture of rights.
Can I wait a minute? Let's just take...
losing their virginities at a very similar age worldwide. It doesn't make any difference what the age of consent is. People want to have sex at a certain age.
You see, to follow your logic, I don't understand why you want an age of consent at all. Because to follow your logic, if you can't police sex and if the age, if you can't sort of say at what age a child becomes properly consensual, then it follows you must have no laws regulating sex behavior. You must have no laws outlawing incest.
So how would you protect
You
children?
must have no laws protecting children whatsoever.
Would you allow 13-year-olds to sleep with 15-year-olds? Would you be happy with that?
I don't see why not, honestly. I mean, I don't think there's much you can do about it. Obviously, if my son or daughter said, I really fancy so-and-so, I'm off to have sex now, I'd probably be in a terrible panic and lock all the doors and refuse to ever let them out again. So there's a great deal of hypocrisy going on from my point of view. On the other hand, I know that when he or she is at school, they're going to be sexually messing around for a fairly
But
early
are you
age.
saying that it's the 10-year-old and the 9-year-old, say in a case where there are 10-year-old boys having